Hey everyone, Dina Russo here again with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Stormwater Services, and we're here for another Water Wednesday. If you missed any of our previous Water Wednesdays, they're saved in our videos file on our Facebook page. Our first Wednesday we did a story time of All the Way to the Ocean, about a story about stormwater as it travels all the way from where we live to the ocean. And then last week we had John Wendell here to do the floodplain model to show us the effects of building impervious surfaces, how that water runs off and how it can affect people that live further downstream of that development, and then kind of how floodplains work, that they're designed to flood. Today we're going to do an Enviroscape model. An Enviroscape model is a model of a watershed, and a watershed is all of the area of land that drains to one water body. So we have a little town here that I'll show you guys in just a second, and we're going to go through everything that happens in that little town and the effects of all of those little things and what effect it has on their drinking water. So I'm going to switch the camera angle down so you guys can see the Enviroscape really well. And in our Enviroscape, you'll see that we have a lot of different areas. You'll see our water body that is our drinking water source. So we have our drinking water source there with the boat. We have some farmland off to, I believe, your guys' right. So you can see our tractor, our cattle that we have set up here, and then the farmhouse. You can see all of our roads and our different neighborhood roadways. Up here we have a factory with a parking lot for everybody. And then we have our neighborhood over here, and then part of this neighborhood is still getting built, so we have some construction equipment up there. So when we're looking at a watershed, we're looking at all of these different places are all going to drain to this one body of water. And you can see we have a boat out there on ours, because especially a lot of people go out on our waterways here in Mecklenburg County, and that's a way of recreation, but that is also our drinking water source. So we're going to go through a little bit of vocabulary words while we're going through this. One of those vocab words would be point source pollution and non-point source pollution. So when I think of point source pollution, that is, I can point to where that problem came from, and I can go as a stormwater employee, and I can go and I can make the people that did that fix that problem, or I can try to find out what's causing that problem to stop that pollution source from happening. So one of the things we have here is our factory. And so maybe this farmer calls and he says, this creek behind my house smells really bad, and I'm a little worried because my cattle get their water from that creek. So you guys can probably see that going through there. This is one of those times we wish we had smell-o-vision, because this is some apple cider vinegar, so it smells as it's going down through there. But now us as employees, we could go out and we can point to that outfall, and that's where that pollution source came from. So that's a point source pollution, because I can track it all the way up to where it came from. Our other pollution source is a non-point source pollution. And those are a little harder to stop because you can't really point to where they came from. So we have lots of non-point sources of pollution. So we will start up in our neighborhood. A lot of us are spending a lot of times in our neighborhood because we're staying home, we're staying safe, and we're doing our part to keep everything under control. So we're spending a lot of times out and about in our neighborhoods. So one of those things that we're doing right now, if you have a dog, a lot of us are out walking our dogs pretty regularly. So when we're out walking the dogs, one of those pollution sources that could be happening is our dog waste, right? So if people are out walking their dogs and they're not taking bags with them and picking up their dog waste, we can have that dog waste left out and about in the neighborhoods. So we have some of that dog waste there. Make sure we get enough of it so you guys can all see it well. That's one of our possible non-point source pollutants. So now, if we think about other things that are happening in the neighborhood, it's spring. A lot of people are doing yard work, starting to get their yards ready for the upcoming summer season. So one of the things people are doing right now are they're starting to mow their lawns for the first time of the season. They might be clearing out some old leaf debris or some dead plants from last year. So something that we may not think of as a pollution source, but it actually is if we're not treating it properly. We have our lawn and leaf debris. So if people are maybe just throwing that stuff or blowing it out onto the road rather than either bagging it up properly or putting it into a natural area where it can degrade, we just want to make sure we're not throwing that down into any streams that might be nearby our house, or we're not putting it out where it's going to go into the storm drain. We want to make sure we're either bagging it up to be picked up, or if you have a yard waste bin, that you're putting it in your yard waste bin, that we're just following all of those solid waste regulations and making sure we're treating that properly, because improperly, you'll see here in a little bit what kind of problems it can kind of cause with everything. So another thing that we might have in those neighborhoods is there a lot of people might be putting down fertilizer on their grass and doing some getting their yards fed and ready. But we want to make sure that we do that properly, because if we just put fertilizer out and we're spreading it around and we don't keep it in our roadways, you guys can see those pink sprinkles kind of falling down on there. All of that stuff will then wash into our storm drains as well. So let's see. So we see that they're doing some construction in this neighborhood. So we could have some dirt or sediment in that area that might be getting out and into maybe the road a little bit if they're tracking it out onto the road. That can be another source of pollution. So now we have dirt and sediment and leaves and grass, which are two natural things, but if they're not treated properly, they can be a source of pollution to our streams and our lakes. So now if we're out and about in our neighborhood, or the last couple of days we've had some windy days, we can also have problems like litter problems. So we have these rainbow sprinkles to kind of represent all of the different kinds of trash that could be blown out and about. And now this isn't very unique to just your neighborhood, right? It could be blowing out along roadways, gathering on the sides of the road. So you can always have litter everywhere, right? And with the windy days, it could have been a trash day and one of the lids blew off and trash ran around the neighborhood. It doesn't have to be intentionally dumping, but it could be any kind of litter that's getting put down onto the ground. And then it looks like our last pollution source we have is motor oil or gasoline or any kind of hydrocarbon like that. So let's say this person is going to go ahead and change their oil, and they're just dumping their old oil out into the road. So you can kind of see what that happens. And then sometimes we could just have cars, right, that may not even know they leak, but they have a slow leak as they're driving around everywhere. So we have all those spots on the road. If you guys have ever seen that, it's kind of pretty rainbow sheen on top of a parking lot at like a Walmart or a Harris Teeter or some big asphalt parking lot. After it rains, you kind of get that rainbow sheen. That's some of those hydrocarbons floating on top of the water that's there. So that's probably from all of the cars that just park there over time and kind of drip, 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 slow and steady, and then we have that buildup when we have a rain. So we also have our farm over here that we haven't talked much about. So as a part of our farm, would we have some of that same animal waste? We would, right? But we don't really tell farmers to go out and pick up after their cows, right? That would be a bad job. So we'll have all of that animal waste right there, and you can see some of it's getting into the creek. And down on the farm, we also have some plowing going on, right? Especially this time of year, they've already got their fields pretty much prepped and got their stuff into the ground to start germinating, but we would have some sediment, right? Some soil back down through there that would be stirred up loose. So we have all of these possible pollution sources all throughout the town. And these are all different from our point source pollution, because now we have our rainstorm, if you can see my spray bottle here, and we'll start kind of spraying down a lot of this. So you can see some of this stuff in the neighborhood, right? If we have all of this debris out there and stuff can't free flow down to where it needs to get into the streams, we will have all of this backup. And you can kind of see all of the stuff that's kind of building up as it's making its way down into the stream. And we can have some of those blockages. And then you can see what it looks like as it's flowing down into our drinking water source, right? So we're really contaminating some of that. And what you guys don't see is what lives along in these creeks, right? So we're putting all of this dirt on top of the little bugs that live down in there, and we need to have those little bugs, our macroinvertebrates, in there because that's what the fish eat. And that's kind of the bottom of our food web that starts everything off. And if we don't have all of those little bugs down there, we're not going to have any fish or any kind of life in our stream. So by us putting all this pollution down on top of them, they're not going to want to live there, and the bugs are going to die and the fish are going to swim away. So now you can see our roadway, all of that washing off down into there. And then you can see we have our animal waste from our cattle. And then some of our dirt from our farms can get washed in during rainstorms. So now that's what our drinking water source looks like. That's not very good, is it? That's not something we would want to be drinking. So let's talk about some things that we could do here, because here's the problem with non-point source pollution. Here's where all of our pollution ended up. So I can go down here and I can get out a chocolate sprinkle. Do we know what dog that came from? We don't really know, do we? So I can't really track that anywhere. And here I have some pink and purple sprinkles. Do I know where that litter came from? That could be from anyone, right? Think of that as a water bottle. If you go out into the lake and you find a water bottle, you can't tell somebody it's their fault that that water bottle's there because we don't know where the water bottle came from. So that's the problem with non-point source pollution. The way you have to get rid of non-point source pollution, if you can't find that neighborhood that might be the problem, or a roadway that might be the problem, or you find the leaking vehicle that may be contributing the oil, what we have to do is we have to try to change the behaviors of what we're doing to be able to prevent that pollution from getting into our drinking water. So what we would do up here, if you think about changing the oil in your car, having oil drip along on the road. When you're dealing with oil, you want to make sure that you're going to take your oil someplace that you can turn it back into. Places like the auto repair shops. They'll take your old oil in, or you can turn it in other places, but just making sure that we're not dumping that onto the ground, that we're putting it into a sealed container so rainwater can't get into it, and then taking it to the proper facility that can dispose of it properly. We want to make sure that we're doing that and not putting it out into our roadways. Or if you know that your car is leaking, try to get your car in to get it repaired. Or if you can't get it in to get it repaired right away, make sure you put a bin underneath it when you park it somewhere so you can catch any of those drippings that are coming out. So that's a way to change our behavior for oil and different hydrocarbons. So if we talked a little bit about our leaves, right? We're going to bag those leaves up. We're going to put them into a natural area. We don't want those to be clogging our storm drains up. We don't want those to be going down and blocking roadways. That can cause road flooding, and then we can have car accidents. We want to make sure that we're able to get that water off the road, especially in this area, because we have a lot of big thunderstorms. So it's not like we have a light drizzle all day where water has time. We're getting it very fast, and we need to make sure that we're able to get it off the roads. So some of the things that you can do at home, even now, is just make sure the storm drains in front of your house are cleared off. Maybe somebody else in your neighborhood, you had a rainstorm, it came and it started blocking your drain. Before the next rainstorm, make sure your drain's cleared off. Just make sure it's got no litter, debris, anything like that. So we're taking care of our lawn care. Litter, trash day, that kind of stuff, just making sure that we pick up stuff that we see as we're walking around. When we go for walks in our neighborhood, I'll often take a plastic bag. That way we can pick up little pieces of trash that we see while we're walking, and then we can bring it back and throw it into our trash can. Sediment, you'll often drive by construction sites, and you'll see that they have that black fencing up around the outside of them. That is a silt fence, and that is designed to still let some water pass through that fencing, but to stop the majority of the dirt that's going to come out. So that prevents that. You also see that they usually have gravel construction entrances, so they're not tracking mud on and off the road. That gravel kind of helps knock the mud off their tires before they come out onto the road. They also have large ponds or basin that is designed to capture some of that storm water before it goes straight into our streams. So we have some measures there. But if you think about that sediment down on the farm, we don't have any protection down there. Some of the things that we've got in place in Mecklenburg County are we have what we call buffers. And those buffer areas are designed to have an area of grass that would be through here, some kind of planted, vegetated area, so our dirt doesn't go all the way straight to the lake. If you live on any of our lakes, you'll know that you have a buffer there that you're not supposed to build anything in. You're supposed to keep it as a natural area. That allows the rain as it flows off to kind of slow down. The dirt will settle out of there, and then you'll have cleaner water running off into our lakes. So that's something we don't see much anymore, is that dirt going straight down to our waterways. Some of the things we talked about dog waste, taking your bags with you, picking it up here, but we didn't talk much about our cattle, where we have all of that animal waste going down through there. So with that animal waste, some of the things that we do is we work with Cooperative Extension and then other organizations. There's grants that what we can do is we can move the livestock further away, and then we can fence them out of the stream and maybe drill a drinking well in there, so we can kind of remove how close their waste is to that water body. And that will help eliminate some of that bacteria from their waste getting into our streams and contributing to our dirty water down there. And then we talked fertilizers that we're putting out on our grasses and stuff like that right now. As long as you're reading the back of the container, we always recommend doing soil sampling. You can send that in for free through the Soil and Water Conservation District, and they have the boxes that you can get. You put your soil in there, you send it off, and then you get results back telling you, here's what your soil needs. So that way we're not applying a bunch of chemicals that you don't need. And then when you do go to apply them, make sure you apply them to the areas that need them. Don't get them out on the road, because we can't grow grass on the road. Sweep anything up that you get out on the road or in your driveway or on sidewalks and get it back into your yard, or else you're just washing that fertilizer or chemical down into the drain. And what people don't realize is there's algae that lives in our streams that is a natural algae, but if we give it all of that plant food, we have these big algae blooms. And when we have those big algae blooms, and algae's life cycle as it dies, it sucks all the oxygen out of the water. So then all of our fish and our other things that are trying to live down there in the water, they're gonna die because they might not have enough oxygen for them to be able to keep living. So I think we've covered all of our pollutant sources. So how do we think we fix this? If we're thinking about this, oh, I know, we could just pull this plug, right? Get rid of all the dirty water, but then we wouldn't have much water to drink, would we? And then in our area, a lot of our dams are used to also generate some of our power. So if we drain our water source, we also wouldn't have any electricity in this area. And if nobody changes what they do and how they're going about their daily lives, what happens when the next rainstorm comes? All of that dirt just goes right back down in there again, doesn't it? Doesn't really change anything. We're still have that dirty water heading down into our drinking water source. So that shows us, unless we change what we're doing farther up in our watershed, we're not going to have clean water down at the end. And that clean water is what we have as our drinking water. So let's think about what's something else that you could do. Well, while you're out and about, if you're walking around neighborhoods, or if you're driving maybe to the grocery to get groceries, something like that, you can always report any pollution that you see by calling 311. 311 takes that call and they send that information to us, and we have investigators that go out into the field and they're going to investigate and see if they can find where that pollution is. They're going to see if they can stop that pollution as soon as possible to make sure that we're keeping our lakes and creeks clean. So make sure, don't hesitate to call 311. Even if you're not sure if it's pollution, if you think you smell something, feel free to call. We're going to go out and investigate. That's what we're here for. So this is our Enviroscape model. You can kind of see all of the different pollutants, how they affect our water body. If you have any questions, feel free to send them our way. If we don't get them now and you have them and you're watching this later, still put them on the comments and we'll see those comments and we can get back to you and answer any questions that you have. I hope that you enjoyed our Water Wednesday. We'll be here again next Wednesday with a different demonstration. And if you have any need for us to maybe come into your classrooms, or if you want us to do anything special with an individual group, please just message us and let us know. We're happy to come in and do individual presentations for everybody. So I hope you all enjoyed. I'm going to squeeze down here and say bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and have a good week.